This is a Global Skills Podcast, conversations that shape the future of work and learning. We're exploring how we close the skills gap and build a future where everyone has the chance to thrive. From education to business, connecting people, ideas, and opportunities that drive change. It's about collaboration, curiosity, and creating real impact today. Because every skill learned brings us one step closer to a more inclusive world. The Global Skills Podcast, where learning and opportunity come together. Welcome to the Global Skills Podcast. And today we're joined by Helen Burns, who leads the talent team at Owkin on a mission to explore complex biology and accelerate the discovery of new treatments and diagnostics for patients. Helen's career is just fascinating, spanning executive search, recruitment, coaching, entrepreneurship, luxury super yacht industry, and even mastering in acting before returning to a lead role of AI and biotech. She lives across UK, New Zealand, Spain, and now France, bringing global experience and human insight to the science of talent. Let's dive into Helen's incredible story and the mission behind the work she does. Helen, you're so welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Vanessa. Looking forward to having a chat.
So where do we start? Because it is amazing to connect with someone who has worked in talent for as long as you have, but you have worked in multiple industries, multiple countries. Maybe could you tell me a little bit about how you fell in or decided on working in the talent industry?
Well, it was definitely a falling in. I think, as many talent people, I was in New Zealand. I am a New Zealander, but I had grown up in the UK and I'd gone back to New Zealand in my very early 20s and was just enjoying life. I was working in hospitality and I was doing temp work. I discovered temp work and I just loved it. I had the personality that thrived in arriving in a different office. And, back then it was things like reception and switchboards and, admin and all of those sorts of things. And I really enjoyed it. And I worked for a particular recruitment agency that had a very, very good reputation in New Zealand. It was called Lampen. It no longer exists, but a very good company. And I had a chat to my temp consultant and said, I think I'd like to do your job. And he said, oh, okay, well, I think you're a bit young. And believe it or not, back in those days, you could actually say those kinds of things to people. Roll forward, and I ended up moving cities and had the same conversation there. And cut through about 6 interviews, and I was finally offered the job of a temp consultant, their youngest ever at that point. And I absolutely loved it. I loved the pace, I loved the sales, I loved the variety, and just sort of discovered I had a bit of a talent for it. So that was the beginning.
Okay. And what's really interesting when you said temp work, I'm just thinking now, and I know I'm jumping ahead here, but with everything changing radically as a result of AI, a lot of leaders have been predicting on interviews I've been doing that actually we may be heading towards a new world where temp work is again the dominant type of workforce or workflow and project and contract rather than long-term permanent careers.
It's interesting. I mean, I've worked in interims as well, so I've done the senior level temp placement. I've run an interims desk, and I also have been an interim. So I came to Owkin actually originally as a freelancer, and before I went permanent. So I'm a big fan, actually. Maybe I shouldn't say that because I'm sure there's lots of people who, but I think it's a really good way of being able to flex the workforce. Everything is changing so rapidly. So how do you predict what's this role that I'm filling now? What will it look like in 6 months, 12 months? Where we have to be a little bit careful, I believe, is on the human side and the stability and the support for people, because it isn't just about the companies. It isn't just about this is a useful kind of throwaway talent. So I think we're probably heading back into that direction where the flexibility is really important to businesses. But I'd like to see us having some benefits to the people who choose to do that kind of work as well, so that it isn't all about the company's flexibility.
What was it that attracted you? And I asked this question for a few reasons, because I think there's going to be leaders listening in that are maybe thinking about bringing in contractors to support scaling or the transition towards maybe more of an AI model. But there's also young people and mid-career people that are thinking, well, perhaps the permanent full-time role is not currently an option, or I'm not getting called back. I need to look at temp contracting, but what does that involve? So what drew you to the industry? And maybe for someone who's considering that, or a leader that's considering it, what do they need to think about if they're to embrace this model?
Oh, we could probably do a whole episode on this, Vanessa. So first of all, it's thinking very clearly about what is this role here to deliver. I think it's being really clear about, is this role here to fill a gap while we look for a permanent person? Is this role here to affect some change? I think contractors can be very good in those changing periods because they come in really with no politics. They come in with a very clear, hopefully, mandate of what they need to deliver. You might have a senior finance role that comes up, for example, but you're aware as a business that you are looking at technology, you're looking at how your business is structured. Do I need a permanent person right now? And the answer might be yes. I want them to do those projects from internally. Or do I want someone with a very specific set of skills right now to help us through this period? So that's from the employer point of view. I guess from the candidate point of view or the contractor, why would you do it? For some people, it's very, very stressful having to come up to speed on, new structures, new people, new interplays. If you have the kind of curious mind and maybe you're you're not afraid of sort of deep diving in and learning some new things, then I think it's a brilliant, brilliant way of broadening your skills. Often as a contractor, you arrive to do a certain mission and then you discover what the reality is in the business. And there's been plenty of times where I've sort of said, "Oh, well, I see that there's a need for that, and I've got this skill." And have you got that skill? And then suddenly I'm doing something else, and so I'm broadening my exposure. And I love that ability. And I have to say, the last couple of long-term freelance roles, I've ended up taking a permanent role. But what I was able to do was check out whether this is something I wanted to hang my hat on for a period of time. So Owkin was one. Another one of my internal roles started as a contract and went permanent. I was with them for 3 years in the end.
That's a really good way of looking at it, because I do really feel for those that have worked for years and have been made redundant now, and they're highly skilled. Like, we're hearing it in these interviews that, roles before that maybe would have got 100 applications are now getting 400 applications, where
Mm.
maybe before 5-10% were a high quality match, and now it's 50%, and people are prepared to take salary drops. So I think it's a really interesting way of looking at it. But you touched on something that was really key and critical, because as an ex-talent acquisition specialist myself and executive recruiter, I remember the days where it would be, here's the job, we need this spec, we need this experience. And you touched on the fact that when you're contracting in a company, you've got skills that you kind of can see that they could be leveraged in the company, but you're bringing the skills forward. And obviously the whole purpose of this podcast is for organizations and leaders and educators to realize the importance of skills and uncovering them, because let's face it, we're all acquiring skills in the workplace and outside of the workplace. What's your opinion around this skills first approach, maybe to matching hiring strategy in the world that you work in?
So I was thinking about this. I've been thinking about this over the weekend, knowing that I was going to talk to you today. And I'm not a big fan of hard skills and soft skills. I think they're all skills. At the moment, I think the technical skills, let's call them that rather than hard skills, that space is moving really rapidly. I'm stating the obvious. To stay present, and there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of, concern. What if I learn something today and it's going to be obsolete tomorrow? Underneath that is the human skill of curiosity, the human skill of flexibility, the human skill of trusting yourself to step into something a little bit scary. I used to have this screensaver on my iPad, which is comfort zone. There's a little circle of comfort zone, and then kind of, where the growth happens is when you step over that line of your comfort zone and you step into those areas where you're perhaps not quite so sure. But if you're underpinned with those human skills of resilience, of curiosity, of adaptability, then I think that applies to then continuing to develop the technical skills that are becoming necessary every day. So that's probably my take on it. I was having a conversation this morning actually with my partner about, generational conversations, and, that it's sort of the nature of each generation to look back and say, in my day, it's every generation has done that for probably thousands of years. My take on it was, well, that's the job of newer generations, is to be pushing boundaries and discovering things. We were those frontiers people in our own particular way. The job of previous generations, I believe, is to stay really curious. So instead of just shutting down, oh, what's all this thing about, whatever, fill in the blank, it's my job to understand what might be interesting about that, might be useful about that, might be something I can learn from. And then I think if we can all step into life with that kind of philosophy, then, I'm not guaranteeing anything here, but I think we probably have a better chance of riding what we've got coming down the pipe.
Yeah, and maybe not leaving anyone behind, because we tap into the humanness of everyone and the soft skills and
Yeah.
the human skills, whatever we want to define them. And I think the fact that you've realized that when you are or your team are considering candidates, how do you assess those soft skills? How are you trying to evaluate the level of, well, firstly, I think a lot of people, when they think soft or human skills, they think of maybe just 5. I'm not a good communicator. I'm not very patient, but there's hundreds of them. And so how do you evaluate all of the soft skills that someone has, and then to what level? Or is that still something that you're trying to crack?
Yeah, I think that's one of the eternal questions, because humans are delightfully complex and also at the same time very, very straightforward in many ways. No, I don't think I've cracked that at all. As a business, where we're at in our development, we've been established for 9 years, but we're still very much in that startup kind of phase, because we're right on the edge of that. The AI and biology it's so at the edge of where we're going. And so that's always interesting when I'm talking to hiring managers about, they're saying, right, well, I want someone with this skill, this skill, this skill, and this skill. And invariably, we're having to have the conversation, does that person exist? Because if you look at how someone will have come to this point in time from their if I perhaps give you an example. So let's say we're wanting someone with very deep biological understanding, and we want them to understand, agentic AI, for example. Then if they followed a fairly classical biological sciences path, where will they have had the opportunity to develop those other skills, or vice versa? If they've leapt on the AI path and they're coming from a computational point of view, where will they have had the chance to really develop those really deep biological skills? So invariably, there's a conversation around, yes, we understand you want it all, but what kind of person can come in and assimilate the gap, wherever we decide that gap is, quickly, and how will you help them? What framework can we work with? What people within the business can support that growth? So we're having those conversations all the time. Around the human side, I don't think it's possible in an interview situation. I don't know, 30 interviews. What we tend to do on the human side is come back to values. So it's listening more for those value statements. So curiosity is one of them. Creativity is another one. So, if you're listening for those elements, then those people are more likely to be successful in our kind of environment. And I think otherwise it becomes an impossible thing to try and evaluate absolutely everything. What does it mean to be curious? Well, there are behaviors that demonstrate that you could slap that label on someone, I guess. So it's the behaviors under those skills.
I think what you've shared about these conversations that you're having with hiring managers are probably what a lot of talent leaders are having with hiring managers right now, because there is this real need for skills in automation and AI and agentic. But the reality is we're all just catching up in these last 2 to 3 years. And the point that you're making about the evaluation of the human skills is an interesting one. Have you ever experienced that? And did you have a technique for overcoming bias?
Yes, and actually, as you're talking, so I'll take you back a few years. It is a few years, but I don't think it's old technology. So I had my own recruitment to recruitment business in New Zealand. I built it from scratch. So for the audience that might not know, that's a recruitment agency that recruited into agency, but also into in-house. It was just as internal talent teams were really, really starting to take off. And in New Zealand, I always say it's a bit like doing business in a village. You know, you absolutely cannot be the shady character. It will get around far too quickly. So my philosophy in building that business was, if I am consulting to my peers, I really need to bring something. I need to bring my game. I can't do anything shady. The other side of it was that it was really difficult to, I guess when I started, what I said was, I don't want to just recycle tired recruiters. Now that sounds awful, but I would have people come in for an interview and they would sit down and they'd say, yeah, I need to change jobs because I'm really fed up with the job and blah, blah, blah. And they would tell me their woes. And invariably, I would have to say to them, do you actually want another recruitment job? Because the job won't change. The office will change, the type of coffee they use will change, maybe the metrics will change a bit. But on the whole, the job is the job is the job. And so I went to industry and said, I'm going to identify future recruiters, bring them out of industry into recruitment. And everyone said to me in the beginning, no one will pay you a fee. No one will pay above industry fee. And I said, no, you will. You will. And this is how we're going to do it. And so I had pulled, what is the role of an agency recruiter? I pulled it back to 6 core competencies. Please don't test me on them now, but we used to interview around those 6 core competencies. And so then all of the reporting when referring was able to say to the hiring manager, you need this competency, this is where they can demonstrate it. This one, this one, this one, this one. What it did was kicked some of that bias. So initially, they were, oh, no, they can't come from, I don't know, being a bench scientist to being a recruiter. Well, here we go. These are the competencies that they're going to need. And this is how I think that they'll be successful. And we placed some brilliant, brilliant people in their first roles into the recruitment industry. And I'm really proud of that, because we sort of just unpicked. It would have been very easy for me just to say, oh, no, you're right. I just need to find you experienced recruiters to move you around. So I think that's a prime example is demonstrate where the value can sit for the hiring manager. And then potentially they might listen and then, bring some proof and then the trust is built.
It's really interesting what you did, because this, as you said, it was before a lot of the AI or the tools we have right now. But in essence, what you were doing was creating that framework of the competencies or skills they needed for the role without the experience, through the interview proving that they had that, or prove reference checks. And then bias was sort of parked, doors were open, and then the proof's in the pudding. Once the first 2-3 hires are successful, now there's a trust with you as a talent leader. So in today's world, and now the industry that you're in, I mean, it's a fascinating industry. I was doing research on it. Actually, just on that point, can you tell us a little bit about the industry that you're in and the innovation that is happening? And now going back to that point of like transferable skills, if people are listening going, God, I'd love to work in that industry. Could or would they do to make that happen?
I've been in this business less than 3 years, and already we have iterated so many times that I would almost be nervous about doing predicting. Now that becomes very difficult when you're a talent leader and you're trying to predict what it is that we'll need and then where do we build those talent pools from? That's my day every day. We've had situations where we've been pretty sure that we're going to need to start pipelining a particular skill. We've sort of started that process, and it's not that the business flip flops or changes its mind. We know where we're trying to get to, but the field that we're playing on is moving so fast. The technology is moving so fast. The outlier, suddenly someone will arrive and some stealth company who's been, working around in the background, and they've just solved a problem that other businesses haven't been able to. And so then that changes the dynamic about what's possible. If people want to join a business like ours, I always say once again, it's really tough. Being contemporary with what's going on in the agentic AI space, but I'm predicting that in 6 months we'll be talking about something else. At the moment, that's sort of the buzz. I'm sure the people deep in research will already be having conversations about something else. So I think for anything, I think we all have to get used to playing catch up. Like at every level, we're going to have to be. So candidates can't get too wed perhaps to a particular path, or even if they are, let's say they've decided when they were 5 they were going to be a doctor and they're still on that path. Even how doctors work with their patients will evolve. And so they're going to have to come in with that learning mindset. They're going to come in with the curiosity to be more than the previous generation's doctors, if that makes sense. So I think we're all playing catch up, really. And that's where I think it really comes back to this constantly learning. Dive in and learn. Get curious.
And I think maybe investing in your soft or human skills, like you mentioned, and I saw obviously on your profile that you act, and that's such a powerful skill in every day. But maybe you could share a little bit about anything that you're doing outside of the workplace that you think is helping you evolve as a professional.
Yeah. And the acting thing was me taking a break and retraining. So I went to university and did a master's in acting, way past all of the peers in my particular class. And as you say, what it gave me was really a range of skills that I had probably long forgotten. My curiosity absolutely was allowed to be sparked there. I think I've always been a curious person, but I think somewhere along trying to get things right in jobs, I perhaps squashed it a bit. You can't have squashed curiosity in acting. It just doesn't work. So anyway, I moved to France 5 years ago. Owkin is English first. We're an international business. And so I have to say, I don't get to practice my French as much as I would like. So I pushed myself out of my comfort zone a couple of months ago, and I saw that the local village, the village over from where I live, had a theatre group, and it's just a weekly theatre group. So I contacted them and said, don't speak fluent French, but could I come along? And they said, yes, we're lovely people. Come. And they are. They're really lovely people. So on a Monday night for 2 hours, I am immersed in both theatre and French. And I've done it for 2 reasons. Number one, well, probably 3 reasons. One, I want to improve my French, but just I work online full time. So sitting down and doing an online course for, another couple of hours an evening after I've logged off my work was not motivating me. Most of the conversation opportunities around here tend to happen during the day, and I'm working full time. So it felt like a great way to immerse myself in real French, everyday French, real people speaking French to me and having to speak it. So doing that, and at the same time, refueling myself in some of those amazing theatre skills. And so we do a lot on improv, we do things with voice and with breath. We work in ensemble work, so working with each other. So there's all of these other skills that, as you say, are relevant in everyday life, but I'm doing it in a fun way, challenging me. Today, apparently, we're going to do a play reading to start working towards doing something at the end of the year. And my scared brain is saying, do you think I could maybe not be well this evening? And my brave brain is saying, come on, it's going to be fun. They're so nice. They're so supportive. Just go and enjoy it. So I will go.
Glad you share that, because I think a lot of people are now thinking, what do I need to do for me? How can I upskill, reskill me? You don't need to wait for the employer to say, would you like a budget? Would you like to go do this? It really, and then the skills that you have. I mean, I do think the CV needs to evolve, because you're reacquiring all these skills that are very transferable, and it's connecting those dots again.
One of the best resources is learn how to network. And that usually puts the fear of, you know, everything into people. People who aren't, oh, I'm not salesy. Oh, I don't want to push myself. There's all of this baggage around that word networking. Find a more palatable way of selling it to yourself. Connecting with people you don't know, making friends in business, getting curious is that curious word again. For me, most of my last roles have come through not just people I've known, but connections I was willing to make. So the role that I had back in 2020 came because I connected with a business, with the CEO of a business that I really admired. Not him, I didn't really know anything about him, but I really admired what the business was doing. It's very genuine about that. And so I connected with him. Little did I know that they had just received some funding. They were just about to start recruiting. And by the end of the phone call with him, I had a new job. We'd made up a job that suited my skills. And the business needed them, but he hadn't had a chance to really do it. So we built a job description together, and I did that. Now, he wasn't an old connection or anything, but I genuinely, I didn't know that's how it was going to happen. I have had roles where it's been people who've known me previously who've reached out and said, would you be interested in this role? I did some research and found out who I needed to talk to. So ever more in these worlds of technology, I think the human to human connection becomes even more important. And the danger is the more we get pulled into technology, the less we remember to put our heads up and actually connect as humans. And it's the humans who I think will help us through those transitions. People usually want to help each other. Mostly people are really, really kind. Underneath all of the stuff, they're kind. So learn to get comfortable with building connections is probably what I'd say.
Helen, thank you so much for today. I've enjoyed learning about your history, the experience, your perspective, your lifelong learning, and even the fact like we met by networking. And
yeah. Yeah.
Having a wonderful conversation, and it just shows you. And I think there's tools like LinkedIn and stuff that just make it so doable to connect with people today. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on the Global Skills Podcast.
My absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks, Vanessa.
Whether you're leading a business, shaping education, planning your next career move, or just starting out, you're part of a global conversation about how we learn, work, and grow. If you've enjoyed this episode, tap subscribe so you never miss the latest insights. And if you've a moment, leaving a quick rating really helps people find the show. For early access to new episodes, event invitations, and the chance to connect with others driving real change, join the community at globalskillspodcast.com. The future of skills belongs to all of us. Proudly sponsored by Abodu, empowering organisations and educators with world-class skills technology to build a better future for everyone.